Yusuf Islam, is that the right pronunciation for a start?
Yusuf Islam, yes.
Why are you in Australia?
We're here to arrange a release of my latest, you may say latest after 17 years, but latest recording, which is actually a CD cassette of the life of the last prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him. And this is a project which has taken me a couple of years to complete, and I suppose it's there to silence a lot of my critics who have said for many years, or complained, why I haven't done anything. And
do you think they had a point?
Well, in a way they did, because, for a long time, of course, I was a pop singer, well known throughout the world, and my life was music, and then to suddenly cut out like that was a shock, for the system. In fact, it was a shock for my system. I had to sort of withdraw. But eventually, from what I've learnt, over the years, there's a good and a bad way of doing everything, and I think that the same in recording. It's not necessarily that I'm coming back into the music business per se, but I think that this, CD has got a combination of many things, of education, of spirituality, and of entertainment. And I think there's that now. I think that the people are rather sick of the same monotonous trends, in the music business. And I think something new like world music is something which people are interested also in.
So how do you describe what's on this new recording?
Interesting, and I think it's more like a spoken word production, which is really in the States as well, is taking off. People now they haven't got time to read a book, or like when they're driving in the car, it's easier to switch on a kind of a spoken word cassette and listen to those to more educational and enlightening, I would hope, material. And music, after a while, just is a bit repetitious, and something that's got some substance. And I think this story is absolutely necessary for many people in the West to understand. And that's why I chose to talk and to record the life of the Prophet. Because you would never understand Islam if you ignore the history and life of this last Prophet who was sent for all people and for all time, and who continues to inspire goodness and perfection in humanity. The problem is, if you look at the Muslim world and simply focus on trouble spots and events and political turmoil, you'll never understand Islam. And yet somehow that's how people perceive Islam, is what's happening in the Muslim world. So that would never lead them to understand very much.
How much of the new recording is music?
You may say 10%, I suppose. There's enough to kind of keep someone satisfied. At the same time, it's not a musical cassette, but yet it has some very interesting traditional sort of songs. And in fact, the one main song was the song which was sung when the Prophet left Mecca to go to Medina after the persecution in Mecca, and the children came out to greet him, and they sang this spontaneous song. And that's the song which I think most of the Muslim world know, but I think very few Western ears have heard that.
Does it sound to you like a recipe for a hit?
Anything could be a hit, I suppose. Yes.
But do you think it is recognisably you? People will say that's what used to be Cat Stevens, that voice?
Perhaps not Cat Stevens, because Cat Stevens sang predominantly in English. Now this has got Arabic words, although it's got English words as well. Perhaps some vintage fans might recognise it, yeah.
Do you think they might actually buy it?
I should think so.
Why? Why would they buy it?
If they want to know a little bit more about the subject, and if they're interested in my ability to communicate, and if they liked me before, I suppose they might think they might like me now.
There must be millions of those old fans who are wondering, why can't you be a Muslim and a pop singer?
Well, of course, there are some Muslim musicians, and such as Richard Thompson, for instance, a well-known guitar player, and etc. The last poets, in fact, if you ever look back, you'll see that they were one of the first groups to start this rap, style. It actually was the last poets, and they were a Muslim group. Some people walk that line. In fact, my name I took originally from one of the artists who I used to like very much. He was a jazz artist. His name was Yusuf Latif. So there are musicians, who maintain their link with the music world and everything. But whatever I did, I was always a kind of what you might call a 100%ist. I like to do things completely. And I did that in my art before, in my music, and I did it when I became a Muslim. As time goes, you find there's a balance, and you have to balance your life. That's what life is about. It's not a matter of retreating to a mountain and praying. The best people, it's said, are the ones who put up with the problems of the people.
But in a way, isn't it a massive waste of the talent that God gave you?
I think that the talent can be used in many ways. I mean, I've been called an architect before, even by my musicians, not necessarily a composer. So I think that or a person can use his talents in many different ways. And that's another reason why I think I've gone back into the studio to do something to show how creatively you don't have to keep on repeating the same old stuff.
Is the music still in your head, though? Is there still new stuff running around in there?
Not like before. I mean, before it was like a race to sort of get another album out and all this kind of thing. No, there's no such thing like that. But gradually, over the years, sort of words have come, and I've put them down, and I've got a small catalogue, I suppose, of interesting things which could be released gradually. But again, not just simply musical records. I mean, there's something that would have to be alongside with it, to make it interesting for me.
Can you sing us just a snippet from the new recording?
I could perhaps play. I've got a little tape recorder, and then we can...
Right. Well, let's actually do that separately. But I mean, is there anything you can do that's just a few...
No.
Something like that? Okay, just a thought. Let me just turn my page here. Do you see it as your duty to use your public profile to spread the word of Islam?
Yes, I think in some way it is a sort of a responsibility to use whatever talents I have in the way of helping for greater understanding, which is, after all, what I was looking for in the beginning myself. I mean, if I had someone like me telling me things that I know now, which I didn't then, it would have been very useful, because, a lot of people, I think, seeking to enjoy and to understand life. And yet, so many of us are subject to the kind of forces and currents of politics and of commercialism. People sort of sometimes give up. Well, I never gave up, and I went through, and I believe I was very gifted to have a chance to discover Islam by reading the Quran before I read the major headlines about Islam, which came soon after that. And I think it is a duty, in a way, to sort of help build bridges to those people who would benefit from having a wider universal outlook at religion, and especially from the Islamic point of view, because that's why a lot of people are embracing this faith, because it does have a universal view, and it seems to be the culmination of all good things in religion.
How would you say that Islam is perceived in Western countries like Australia?
Well, obviously there's a long history of, you may say, bias or lack of knowledge about the religion. Again, it's the same kind of problem that, you're focusing on not necessarily Islam, the religion itself, but you're focusing on people, political expressions of nations around the world who happen to be Muslim. It's the same as sort of trying to judge Jesus Christ by just looking at the IRA and what it's been doing, and even Chetnik and Serbian aggressions. I mean, if you look at that, you wouldn't be able to understand the teachings of Christ. It's the same kind of thing. There's a kind of a blockage because people are focusing on the wrong thing.
So why don't you want to talk about politics?
Because again, that's one of the reasons. Because if you do talk about politics, you tend to focus only on the here and now, and you forget about the hereafter. And I think the major job, or the major mission of prophets, Jesus, Moses, Abraham, and the last prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them, was to guide people not just into matters of this world, but into the hereafter, which is, after all, everlasting. That's going to be more important.
And you've received a bit of criticism for commenting about politics.
Yes, I think I've learnt my lesson, not to open my mouth too much about certain things, because, again, people will use that in different ways.
And people would say, perhaps, that it seems a long way from peace train to those sorts of controversies.
People make all sorts of comments.
How do you feel that
There's I think a new movie coming out soon which has used peace train as its sort of theme, and it's called War. So I don't know.
Is there something that you wish people would ask you about?
What?
That's what I'm asking you. I mean, do you find yourself in interviews like this wondering, why doesn't somebody ever ask me about this and this and this? Is there something that you sort of a question that you've been dreaming to be asked?
Well, I suppose the best question would be to talk about. No, I think you've asked most of the main questions, which I've answered. I think that if you were to go deep into a long conversation, and if we had enough time, I would certainly like to discuss things. But it's not a kind of a preaching style. You'd have to sort of, in normal conversation, talk about things.
Your image now seems very serious, very severe almost, but you are still allowed to laugh, aren't you?
Yes, I think that people who meet me are maybe more surprised that I'm not actually that serious, and I am depicted in some ways through the press as being incredibly serious. That's not true, and that is one of the problems. People don't get a chance to listen for that long, and even in an interview like this, you'll only have a few minutes to actually grasp, and that's why I suppose it's good for me to do the kind of thing I'm doing now, which is to have a bit longer on a CD, to be able to explain.
So what are you like in real life? How do you describe yourself?
This is it.
What you see is what you get.
Right.
It seems like every other 70s icon is cashing in on the nostalgia craze at the moment. Why not you?
Well, I'm not in this for money, because I don't need that. But the record companies continue to thrive on what they do best, and they do best, and they're trying to find out what the market's interested in. And I think that's obviously what's going on, is that people have got catalogues, and perhaps people are fed up with the well, not fed up, but they're finding a new way of repackaging something old, which is nostalgic, which people are already affiliated with, and they want a new CD of it or a new compilation. It's like what music is, selling the same old thing a different way.
And is your old music coming back in again?
Apparently, in Australia, is something bubbling around the jars.
You've been told about that?
Yes, I was informed, and that continues to go on, I suppose. But that's I see my records as quite clear, open document of my search and my coming to understanding in life.
Have you looked at the old videos and listened to the old records? Maybe tried on some of the old outfits?
No.
Why not?
It'd be ridiculous.
Everybody else is cashing in on all this.
Yeah, I think it's slightly ridiculous to still see Mike Jagger. I think, you know, it's at 60 years old, jiving on stage. I mean, I think that it gets a point where, you know, a person has to mature.
So do you believe the old songs achieved anything? Did they do any good for the world?
I think that the general trend in the world, I mean, the generation that I grew up with, who are now sort of in positions of power. Even now you've got Clinton, who was, you know, I'm sure an avid Fleetwood Mac fan. People are now in these positions, and for sure we would have affected the perception of the world, and helped in some way, and that's good. That's good. We needed a new view, but music didn't finally, in the end, solve anything. It was great to use on an election campaign, but, you know, that's only, after all, concentrating on a personality who believes he's the best one to run the country. That's not necessarily going to be true, as we're finding out. Everyday politicians become presidents or prime ministers. They change.
Well, how do you look back on your old stuff?
No, I mean, I don't look at it either with a telescope or a microscope. It just happens to be there. It is something which enables me to relate to a lot of people, and they can relate to me, which is good as a focus point, and particularly as now I happen to be a Muslim, and I think that's very important. Perhaps by divine intervention or guidance, I was chosen to be a Muslim because there is such a misunderstanding about Islam, and again, because of that, there's a great injustice being dealt to people in general by not giving them the right access to something which could make a lot of people very happy.
Well, of the lyrics of your old songs, is there something in particular that holds true for you today?
I suppose that there are many sort of, you know, which were hints of things perhaps to come. I don't know, Peace Train, I suppose, was an interesting one. Peace Train is a symbol of a lot of people going the same way to the same destination at the same time. And one hopes that would happen. And I think man is built on hope.
But no more pop songs, ever?
La. That's Arabic for no.
Is Cat Stevens dead or just resting?
May he rest in peace.
Okay, that's a good ending.